Welcome back. It's time for another episode of Healthcare Horrors. I am Ashley, a brand specialist.
I'm Alicia Carosella, your veteran training and development specialist.
I think eventually you can drop the veteran part off, right?
No, because you made me. So now I start to say it normal, and then I'm like, nope, Dolan got after me last time, so now I'm saying it.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, the veteran part comes from when Alicia was a recruiter here at Atlas, and our recruiters like to adopt brands.
That was my brand.
And that was her brand, was just her background in the military and kind of understanding what it was like to be on the front lines.
Glad that now we're into like the 30s of our episodes. Like, we're finally explaining why.
Did we not explain it in the beginning?
I don't think we've ever explained this.
Oh.
We've kind of like explained it really quick, but never fully in depth. We could do each episode as like a bio on who Alicia is and who Dolan is.
Oh God.
And I'll just do the commentary.
I wonder like what reviews we'd get then.
My bio is easy. Hi, I'm Dolan. I'm on the knobs.
I was gonna say knob guy.
Knob
You're
guy.
so much more. You're in a band. You've got long,
so
luscious
much
locks.
more than just the knobs.
You have a hedgehog and
You
two
do.
dogs.
Yeah.
And a wife.
And a wife.
And a wife. Hi, Sam.
The wife was... Oh, it's okay. She actually listens, guys. So
I know.
Yeah.
Hi. Hello.
Sam is beautiful.
She is. She's pretty awesome. She's got good style, too. I like her style.
She really does.
Last time we talked about Charles Cullen, who allegedly could have been responsible for 400 plus murders.
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
It's a lot. Mm-hmm.
There's a show, right? Netflix?
It's actually a couple shows.
Couple shows?
But wasn't it The Good Nurse?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, there's a movie on Netflix called The Good Nurse, and then there is another show on Netflix about him as well. I don't remember what it's called, but I think it's a little more documentary style than a movie.
Than The Good Nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, today we're going to be talking about Colin Norris. So Colin Norris was born February 12th, 1976, which makes him an Aquarius. And the positive traits of Aquarius are that they are visionaries, progressive, intelligent, and original. Their negative traits are cold, condescending, overly idealistic, and unpredictable, aka quick to anger. So overall, they may seem insensitive, but are compassionate and sympathetic toward others. So we'll see if Colin is any of those things.
See if this pans out.
Yeah, I think he might be some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
So he's from, I had this in my notes and now it's gone. Isn't he from Scotland?
Glasgow, Scotland, yeah.
Okay. So he originally worked as a travel agent after leaving college. There's not a ton of like background on his childhood, but there's some interesting stuff in here that we'll get to. But so he originally worked as a travel agent after leaving college, but after a few years of doing this, he decided to retrain as a nurse. He was described by friends as someone who loved being the center of attention, and he enjoyed dramatics, amateur dramatics. So his academic record was average, and he became known for being quick to anger and aggressive confrontations with tutors and also later employers. He had behavior issues toward lecturers at the University of Dundee, and his behavior was described as unacceptable. He was very argumentative with his tutor and later said about her that my tutor and I didn't exactly see eye to eye. I had a personality clash basically because I had one and she never, that's confusing. She never, it said never, and was my personal tutor. So basically she didn't have a personality is what he's saying. So
maybe he didn't have the personality.
Yeah, he sounds like he thinks he's better than people.
Oh, absolutely.
So shortly before all of this was happening, this tutor was known to have also taught Norris about Jessie McTavish, a nurse who was convicted of murdering a patient with insulin at Rutchill Hospital in Glasgow, less than a mile from where Colin Norris grew up. She was later released on an appeal as a technicality. So I think the point of mentioning this is that Jesse McTavish is someone that he kind of became to idolize.
Yeah, so that was in a class that he was taking during nursing school, right? About like how to have good bedside manner and take care of elderly patients and stuff. And I think the instructor like told the class a story about this lady. What was her name?
Jesse McTavish.
Yeah, that she killed someone, basically got away with it, and that just kind of like sparked his interest for some reason.
So, I mean, and there's just some more information about how he's aggressive and violent. But then his stepmother, this is interesting, was in her 40s at the time. She was a sex worker in Glasgow and was convicted of 3 prostitution-related offenses between 2004 and 2006. So,
yeah, I don't think he had too bad of a childhood. I mean, there were some things that maybe weren't ideal like that for a child, but his father was also pretty absent. He didn't have like the greatest father figure because his father just wasn't around as much once his parents got divorced. And it seems like I didn't even know he went to college because I know he didn't do well academically, and he eventually like dropped out of school at some point and then went into the travel agent field.
Random.
Yeah. And then just decided he wanted to do something that made more of a difference, and just like went into nursing. Yeah, I don't have too much about his grandmother other than just growing up he must not have had the strongest bond with his parents, but he did have a strong bond with his grandmother. And he eventually moved in with her and just helped take care of her. Honestly, that's all I really have. I don't have many specifics on her. And then he just like started going through school, and for some reason was really into the like geriatric unit. Not into it, but he just kind of fell into working with elderly people.
Well, it's kind of interesting because when he was training to be a nurse, he often refused to work with elderly patients, saying he didn't want to be working with that type of person, which was kind of unusual for someone in a medical profession, right? Because you're just supposed to be helping all the people. He also, at one point, I guess, admitted to the police that he found like elderly patients challenging. And I don't know where this comes into play, but it says, Colin Norris was openly gay at the time. This may have been, a revelation. But he said he had a particular dislike of caring for women as well. He said that he found it difficult to wash elderly female patients who couldn't bathe themselves because he couldn't get used to the smells. Which, that sucks, but that's what happens when you're a nurse. You gotta help people bathe themselves. So at times during his with his patients, he repeatedly refused to change patients or their bedding, which that's not gonna help with the smell if you're not gonna help the situation there, buddy. That's your job.
Right.
He also told another nurse during training that in 2001 that he didn't like working with geriatric patients, and something minor such as an elderly patient throwing bed covers off would cause him to get super angry. He also said he hated his, training placements in geriatric units. So apparently he's really vocal about how much he hates working with women and elderly patients. He refused to attend one of his training rounds at a nursing home for the elderly, and also called in sick a bunch at other nursing homes where he was supposed to be training, including calling in sick after only 3 days at one nursing home and then just never coming back again. So after starting work in October 2001, he told a colleague he was having second thoughts about a career in nursing because he didn't like old people, which is like, okay, we get it. You don't like old people. There are a lot of other places you could go do nursing that is not with geriatric patients, my friend. So according to Colin's father, he once stole from his own grandparents before he was a nurse while they slept in the family home after a funeral. And he was charged, when he was charged with the murders that we will talk about in 2005, his father said It sickened me. Only scum would stoop that low and rob off old people, especially his own flesh and blood. And I guess this incident happened in 1995, and it caused Colin's dad to actually disown him.
Mm-hmm.
And then his dad also said that his son demanded 18,000 pounds from him as payback from his parents divorcing. So talk about entitled. And then his dad said there's something not quite right about him. And police would later discover that Norris had repeatedly mistreated elderly patients in the early months of his nursing career before he went on to do what he did. So an example of this mistreatment is that an elderly man had requested that Colin empty his catheter bag, but he absolutely refused and insisted that the patient went into the bathroom and did it himself and then just left work. And then the elderly man collapsed after trying to reach the bathroom himself. And so, I mean, he's just really cold and rude and does not like his job whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't know how he even moved forward in this field and didn't get fired unless they were short-staffed or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, dude, just find a different specialty.
Yeah, and I think he was saying, it says here, he was saying to these people, like, I hope you suffer and rot in hell.
Yeah.
Which, like, and this is coming from the elderly patients themselves. So it's like somebody's saying something about this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would hope before it got to the point that it did, but this was clearly somebody who was already at their breaking point.
Yeah, the amount of resentment that he had early on and just his poor attitude, I feel like no matter where he would have gone, though, he just would not have done a good job and he would just be unhappy. He seems like the type of person just focus on the negative.
Yeah, definitely. And he seems like he's very impatient, and 18,000 pounds from your parents for getting a divorce. That's, what does he want? Pain and suffering damages? Like...
Right. All right. So
that's his background. That's where he's coming from. So now we're set up perfectly for him to, go off and
start
do what he does.
Doing the things. 1999, that was his internship at Dundee's Nine Wells Hospital. He worked at the Royal Victoria Hospital, worked with geriatric patients, and then so he's 25 years old in 2001 when he begins work at Leeds General Infirmary in Leeds, Yorkshire, after finally receiving his higher nursing diploma. I just don't even know how you would get through nursing school if you struggled academically, because I've just heard nursing school is crazy.
I know a lot of people who have gotten through nursing school who probably shouldn't have.
Well, and if you go to nursing school, obviously it's something you're more interested in than math or something like me.
C's get degrees.
He eventually moves in with roommates. He gets assigned to the orthopedic ward working with elderly people, of course. His poor reputation and attitude continues. His lack of professionalism follows him, and he never gets reprimanded when he refuses to do the things like change bedpans or address bed sores or catheters, helping the elderly man who falls, things like that.
I'm curious why he's not reprimanded for any of this, because it's like it sounds very obvious. You're not doing anything that is your job.
And telling patients to go to hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just sounds very narcissistic and ungrateful. Why wouldn't you change specialties at this point? He also ends up picking up extra shifts at St. James Hospital. So he is a per diem nurse where he's just paid by the day to work at another hospital here and there to make some extra money. May 2nd, 2001, Colin finally reaches his breaking point. So we're going to get into his first victim. Vera Wilby, she's 90 years old, and she is admitted to Leeds after breaking her hip. Doctors reset the hip, but they're puzzled at the sudden deterioration of her health because she's doing well recovering, and then all of a sudden things go south. They are able to save her and get her back on track. There wasn't any hard evidence, but Colin was most likely overdosing her on morphine. But she does live. And then his next victim, Doris Ludlam, isn't as lucky. She's an 80-year-old who's also admitted for hip replacements. Lots of elderly people, lots of hip replacements in this one. June 25th, 2002, shortly after Colin's shift, Doris is found in a comatose state and dies 2 days later. She was given a lethal dose of diamorphine and insulin. I don't know why it's never questioned or anything, though. You know, just kind of gets swept under the rug. Bridget Bork, the next victim, she was a stroke patient, 88 years old. This time, Colin's getting a little more ballsy, and he is the one to find her and call attention to her. He claims to have found her unconscious, and she dies the next day, I believe. Her blood sugar levels were extremely low.
An inexplicable hypoglycemic attack,
which happens with insulin. So these two deaths were at Leeds General Hospital. So if we've learned anything at this point, obviously the pattern of deaths is going to start matching up with your shifts. If you work at two different hospitals and you start
people are dying on your shifts only
at both hospitals, like,
I feel like that's a reoccurring thing on this podcast.
Yeah.
All the nurses are like, oh, hey, I'm going to call this the death shift or whatever.
Right.
And it's just like the most blasé, like, thing ever. Because I think people are like, oh, this person's just bad luck.
Yeah.
Now they murdering people.
Well, it's because you can't picture yourself doing it. And you work with that person, so you can't picture them doing it.
You probably eat lunch with them in the break room and whatever.
Well, yeah, just another trend is just the insulin or morphine. It's just the overdosing of insulin usually.
And I would say by this point, like in the 90s and early 2000s, like this has happened so many times, like in these recent years surrounding this, that you're like...
Yeah, but it can never happen at your facility, right?
Like, why are we not... Gosh, why are we not catching on?
Or if they do, the hospitals don't want to...
Yeah,
well,
they don't want that
because they don't want a bad reputation. And I understand, like, a lot of these hospitals aren't nonprofit, you know, they're businesses, and so it looks bad for business.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Especially when it's people's livelihoods, you know.
All right, so we're going to move on to St. James Hospital. He's at the other hospital. So Irene Crooks, 79, admitted for a broken hip. She dies October 20th, 2001 from a hypoglycemic coma. And so at this point, since he is starting to kill people at the other hospital, I feel like he's just starting to get really cocky and really comfortable with this.
Yeah, I would say.
And then Ethel Hall, his next victim, she's 86, recovering from hip surgery at Leeds in November of 2002. So at this point, it's been a year. Ethel is recovering quickly until she begins having fainting spells while walking through the halls with her cane. When Ethel first arrived at the hospital, despite recovering well, Colin claimed to another nurse that he was worried about her health, even though she was up walking and doing well. So, red flag. And then he ends up predicting her death to
predicted her death.
He also said things like, whenever I do nights, someone always dies.
Bro.
So,
Bro.
hello.
I got nothing else.
Bruh. So one morning, Ethel was found struggling to breathe. She had low blood sugar and elevated insulin levels. Finally, the hospital raises a red flag. They realize there's been too many undetermined deaths, and they decide to call authorities. Poor Ethel did not make it, though. By December 2002, the investigation begins. The West... Do you have anything?
Oh, I was just nodding along with you because they actually took a blood sample from her, and that's how he ends up being caught.
Okay.
He didn't expect it, and it was sent to a specialist laboratory, which is how this investigation actually starts.
Okay.
Because he thought it was just going to be written off as another natural causes death.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, well, the investigation starts, and the West Yorkshire police interrogate doctors and nurses at Leeds General Hospital. After learning about Colin's comments that he made to a coworker about Ethel's death, authorities set their sights on Colin. The bodies contained large amounts of insulin, so yeah, they did an autopsy and postmortem.
Finally.
Yeah. Colin, like he has struggled with his whole life, he has a problem with authority and those who are higher than him, so he did not want to cooperate with the police. And then he showed no remorse when he was asked about the families of the deceased. Colin, now 26 years old, he gets arrested, but they don't really have anything to hold him, and so he gets released on bail, and then his nursing license just gets suspended. So what does he do? He decides to travel abroad for a while. During this time, he meets a boyfriend. In 2003, they don't last very long because Colin does have violent outbursts. Meanwhile, the authorities never stop digging stuff up about Colin, and they end up finding or collecting 3,000 pieces of evidence to put him away.
3,000?
Yeah.
Excuse me. My goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Not to mention all of the, I guess, testimonials from his coworkers and doctors and stuff that have worked with him. So they find out that he could have been responsible for 18 deaths. They arrest him again. And yeah, like I said, many of the statements from his fellow staff were against him. October 16th, 2015, he gets charged with 4 counts of murder and 1 attempted murder. He's sentenced to life in prison with minimum 30 years before parole. A psychiatrist said that, wow, I apparently just stopped taking a note mid-sentence.
Sometimes it'd be like that.
Yeah, he was evaluated by a psychiatrist, but I didn't finish that thought. Stay tuned. Or fill in the blank.
I'm sure they found some pretty red flag things.
We'll go with that.
Do you want to know what the judge said?
I would love to.
All right, we'll say what the judge said at Norris's sentencing. We'll just take a turn here. He said, "You are, I have absolutely no doubt, a thoroughly evil and dangerous man. You are an arrogant and manipulative man with a real dislike of elderly patients. The most telling evidence was that observation of one of your patients, Bridget Tarpey, who said, 'He did not like us old women. My view is you did not like them because you required too much nursing. Because they required too much nursing and were too demanding of your time. You are, in my judgment, essentially lazy, as evidenced by your absences from student placements and work.'" So.
Fair.
Yeah, tell it like it is.
Yeah.
And so it was a unanimous jury decision. So
I'm like just reading through the last bit of notes that I had. I should not have stayed up till 4 a.m. writing this stuff
You stayed up till 4 a.m?
Sometimes.
Girl, I'm not. Sometimes I wake up at that time, but I'm not going to bed at that time.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know what was going through my head.
Nothing, because you were delirious.
I have notes, something about nursing school, and I don't know. I'm just not even going to read this.
Oh. No, read it. I want to know what it says.
Colin's, we can just cut this out of the podcast.
I know, but I want to know what it says.
It doesn't make sense.
I know, that's why I want to know.
Colin's story changed nursing school. Okay, now that I'm reading it out loud. Okay, so this whole trial changed how they do nursing school.
Oh, okay.
And allowing supervisors' oversights or notes on nurses or students to be passed on and taken seriously.
Good.
So they can focus more on red flags and certain patterns of behavior. Okay, I'm glad we worked through that.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
I was like, just read it out loud. Let's see what it says.
Yeah, now we don't have to cut it out or anything.
Perfect.
We worked through it. Perfect.
Where are we now? February 2021. The case gets sent to the Court of Appeal. So technically one day he could still be free because he had
I hope
30
not.
years. Yeah.
Well, he'll be elderly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
And
karma.
he'll need nurses.
Payback's a bitch. If we've learned anything, it comes full circle.
Remember Dr. Lizard?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say that.
That's a true payback's bitch story right there.
Yep.
Dr. Lizard, aka Linda Hazard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dr. Hazard.
Yeah. The stomach.
Yeah.
Will never grow up.
Nope. And that is okay. All right. So yeah, let's come back around to his astronomy.
It's a potential
Not
future.
astronomy. Horoscope.
Astronomy.
Astronomy. The stars. Just thinking.
Astrology.
The astrology.
I love it
Is
here.
astronomy.
Before we do that, after the trial, it was revealed that he believed, the detectives and investigators believed that Norris had been responsible for up to 6 other deaths at those hospitals. He was the only nurse on duty when 3 other suspicious deaths occurred, but police felt there was not enough evidence to pursue convictions for those situations.
Mm.
So,
You said 3 others or 6 others?
6 others, and they said
3 of them didn't have
3
enough.
of them.
Okay.
He was the only nurse on duty for 3 of those.
Oh, okay.
Traits: visionaries, progressive, intelligent, original, cold, condescending, overly idealistic, unpredictable, and quick to anger.
I think all of those check out except for original.
He was not original. Although I do feel like it's a little original to ask your parents for a sum of money upon their divorce.
Yeah. That's a new one.
Man. I'd
Could you
be
imagine?
so rich from my mom. I'd be like,
Don't.
yo.
I hope your mom does not listen to this podcast.
I don't even know if she knows what a podcast is. But
Okay, cool. I hope not. Oh man, I could be rich too.
there you go.
I think we should make that a thing.
What?
Asking our parents for money when they get divorced.
Oh, dang. I was one of those kids whenever I heard a cuss word, I would ask for money.
Ah.
I was one of those kids.
Like anybody or just your parents?
Anyone?
Huh.
Anyone who cussed?
You'd be like,
Oh,
give me
man.
$1.
I made $11 from my uncle on Christmas
Dang, girl.
when I was little. That was a lot of money
You
to
were
me.
Racking up the dough.
Man.
Yeah, I was.
I just,
If Forrest asked for money every time I cussed, I'd be poor.
I need
be
to,
very poor.
man, I should have been smarter as a kid. That's like cheat codes.
Right? I would just like be standing there and my grandpa would just like look at me and just like hand me a $5 and then just like let it go.
Dang.
Wow. That's
And
awesome.
now I cuss like a sailor as well. It's fine.
Well, the other day, Forrest was watching TV and he said, they said a bad word. And I was like, well, what did they say? Which they didn't. I think he thought they did. And he said, I was like, you can say it, you won't get in trouble. And he said, fuck. And I was like laughing, so I like turned around and I was like, they didn't say that, honey. And he goes, okay. I said, but you never say that word ever again.
Oh.
But he really didn't want to say it, which is amazing because I say that word probably 50 times a day. But he doesn't cuss, so I'm like very proud of him.
That's good.
He's a good kid. But when he said it, I was just like, that's the cutest thing I've ever heard.
Cute. I didn't like to cuss around my parents. Like, even as like a teenager, I just never...
Well, my mom was always cussing at me.
Yeah. But
we were cussing when we were like 10, like
100%.
I just wouldn't do it around my parents.
That's so respectful of you.
But like now it's obviously different, but
right.
Dang.
Cool.
Well,
all right,
I'm glad we had this talk.
Colin Norris.
He's not original, and it's almost always the same thing with these people. It's just like they don't like somebody, so they're just going to take it into their own hands and inject them with insulin or morphine and then get a high off of it and then just keep doing it till they get caught.
Yeah.
He had no care in the world if he got caught.
I agree. It didn't really seem like he had anything else going for him.
No, definitely not.
So, whatever.
So, well, don't do what Colin Norris would do. And next time,
we are talking about the Lain's Angels of Death. So there's probably different ways to pronounce it. Maybe Lane's Angels of Death or Lain's Angels of Death.
I liked the way that you said it because it's Austrian.
Yes, Lain's.
I like it.
There are some names, though, that we're probably going to butcher a little bit just from the American way of saying it versus the Austrian.
Yes, Austrian
way of saying it.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, stay tuned. In 2 weeks, we will be back.
Healthcare horrors. Murder.